In the US, 84% of the people on the waiting list need kidneys. So kidneys are by far the largest part of the organ shortage. 20 to 30 people die every day. We would be saving all those lives.
Hi, I'm Nick Gillespie with Reason TV, and today we're talking with Sigrid Fry-Revere. She's the author of the new book, The Kidney Sellers, A Journey of Discovery in Iran. She's also the founder and president of the Center for Ethical Solutions. Sigrid, thanks for talking to us.
Thank you, Nick.
You go to Iran, and one of the most fascinating things about the book and about your journey there is in America we have waiting lists for people who are trying to get kidneys. There they have people who are on a waiting list to sell their kidneys. You know, how is the kidney market working in Iran?
It's pretty amazing because 30 years ago, when Iran had its revolution, they were actually part of the European network. So they were engaged in learning how to use cadaver organs the way we were doing it, and they were, you know, going back and forth with the technology and even with the kidneys. And when they got cut off, partially obviously due to their own desire not to be part of the West and because of sanctions, they had to think outside the box because their kidney disease patients were dying. So there you have started with a 30-year history of developing towards a system that works. And one of the things that just amazed me is that if you had watched Iran, or if you learn about the history of what they did, you can see how they moved to more and more compensation, more and more benefits for donors, more and more security for donors. And now you're up to the point where donors get approximately, in US equivalent, $45,000 worth of cash and services.
And this is for living donors, because we don't really, most of us don't need two kidneys. So you essentially in Iran, you can sell a kidney and get $45,000 back. What kind of impact has that had? You know, there's a waiting list for people to sell organs. I assume that that means people who need organs get them pretty quickly.
Everyone who needs an organ can start the process right away. The process takes longer than the Iranians had claimed. I mean, it took about 16 months for the people I interviewed on average. In the US, 84% of the people on the waiting list need kidneys. So kidneys are by far the largest part of the organ shortage. 20 to 30 people die every day. We would be saving all those lives.
So what has to happen for, you know, this, because this is a mind shift for people to say, okay, we're going to allow people to be compensated for organs. I mean, we allow people to be compensated for certain types of blood products and, you know, and other types of things as long as they're replaceable, right? What has to happen, both in terms of legal changes as well as kind of philosophical understandings, to move forward into a different era of organ compensation?
That's really an excellent question, and that's really the hardest hurdle to come over. And one thing I learned in Iran is they don't think of it as selling. You know, your organ is not a commodity. It's not a widget that you can make more of. What it is it's a service to humanity. So what the person is selling is a service, is trying to help someone else. It's not, they don't really think of it as giving their organ away or selling their organ. And it's really interesting because we talk about organ donation in those terms. And so I've started to talk about compensated organ donation because every single kidney seller I interviewed said the money is important, it's what allows me to be altruistic. Without money, I can't do a good deed.
Right. So what you know, what has to happen? Like, who are the biggest people who are against compensated organ donation?
Well, really, it's kind of a fluke in history, because what happened is when the National Organ-Transplant Act was passed, it was passed to create a system for distributing cadaver organs, because we had really just discovered with with immunosuppressant drugs, excuse me, that we could use cadaver organs. And so the thought was, why put a human being at risk at all? And so that fluke caused Congress to ban all compensation.
Is the idea of self-ownership, which seems central to, you know, most libertarian ethics, is that on the rise? And is it on the rise in a way that affects medical treatments where I own my body? You know, we see drug legalization in various places and people saying, you know, it's my body, I get to decide what goes into it. Are we getting to a place where that will ultimately transform medicine and saying, or organ donation, I get to control what comes out of my body.
I wish that were true. Unfortunately, I don't think so, because a lot of the ethicists want to go in the direction of presumed consent, which is essentially eminent domain over the body, that when you die, your body belongs to the state as opposed to yourself or your relatives.
And that is troubling for any number of reasons, but partly because if presumed consent, they could also say, well, you know, Sigrid, you're going to be dead sometime, so I'm just going to pay it forward and take your organs now without your consent because they're not really yours anyway.
That's, I mean, theoretically that's possible, but that's a slippery slope. That, you know, that's an argument you could apply to almost anything, right? So I'm not sure that would happen, but I think just the notion that we should be giving away even our body parts for the sake of the state is really ridiculous. And these things are worth something. And if I'm worth something, or part of me is worth something, whether it's my labor or my hair or my eggs or my kidney, and I'm willing to give that to society, I should be compensated for that. And for goodness sake, society is willing to. These recipients are going out on the black market and taking huge risks. So there's no doubt that people are willing to compensate people for their organs.
All right, well, we will leave it there. We've been talking with Sigrid Fry-Revere. She's the author of The Kidney Sellers, A Journey of Discovery in Iran, which has gotten phenomenal reviews. Kirkus really loved it. She's also the president of Center for Ethical Solutions. Sigrid, thanks so much for talking to Reason TV.
Thank you, Nick. My pleasure.
For Reason TV, I'm Nick Gillespie.